Hey everybody, Jimmy Smith back from my holiday break. I miss you guys. I hope you miss me a little bit too. But it's the first pay-per-view of 2025 for the UFC. It's a solid card. But before I make my predictions and all this stuff, it's another one where the odds are pretty skewed. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. But you look around at the odds, hard to make money on this one, unless you are betting hard on some underdogs, but we'll go into it in a second. Kevin Holland versus Reinier de Ridder, who is a Dutch fighter who's coming off a submission win over Gerald Meerschaert. If you didn't see his whole career, he was a one fighter. Was on the shelf for like a year and a half with them. 2 losses with them, came back, has done well in the UFC so far. Only had 1 fight, but a submission win over Gerald Meerschaert is no small feat. Taking on Kevin Holland, who a well-known commodity in the UFC, but one of those guys, to me, who we've seen the ceiling on him, where he was a guy at 185, especially the win over Jacare. We thought, all right, maybe he could be a contender. Goes on a slide as soon as he fought, the gatekeeper guys, right? And Derek Brunson, Marvin Vettori lost to both of them. And at 170, it's been up and down, where he'll have those great performances, and then he'll kind of, when he loses, he tends to lose in dramatic fashion. Khamzat Chimaev made sense, but Wonder Boy kicked the crap out of him. These kind of moments when you're supposed to show us you can get to that next level, he hasn't gotten there. He's athletic. He's tricky. He's explosive. He's skilled enough that if you're not one of the guys who can move on to the next level, you're going to have trouble with the guy. He's a perfect gatekeeper, in a sense, at 170 pounds. So this is de Ridder's opportunity to show that he can be more than a mid-level guy at 170 pounds, and Kevin Holland's a tough guy to do it against. I'm sorry, 185. This one's taking place at middleweight, although Kevin Holland has fought at 170 pounds. So I've never been sold on Kevin Holland. It's just the consistency's not there, where, as I just mentioned, these up and down performances, and it's not as though everybody who beat him was an absolute world beater. He should have had a much better performance against Wonder Boy than he did. It's not as though, Marvin Vettori and Derek Brunson were world beater great guys at 185. He just tends to fall flat when it comes to guys who aren't, or even like top of the mid-level, right? Reminds me a little bit of like a Bobby Green, where, he's explosive enough to catch certain guys, but not elite guys. Whereas de Ridder, I'm not sure. I think he's a really solid fighter. I think he's going to be comparatively good. If you know anything about Dutch kickboxing, they have great, stand up there. I had the privilege of training there a little bit. And, his submission game is very, very good. I don't know if he catches Holland, might catch him late. Holland's problem is that explosiveness and that unorthodox attack he has tends to wear out early. He does his best work in the first round. If you can get through that, you can be all right. I think de Ridder has the experience to get through that first round, probably win by decision. The odds, when you look at Best Fight Odds, which has the odds for kind of, every single gambling site, it is roughly even. You can get minus 112, minus 120, minus 110. It's pretty much a coin flip fight. I would go with de Ridder, probably by decision over Kevin Holland. Beneil Dariush versus Renato Moicano. This is one of those where in their prime, Beneil Dariush all day. I really believe that. If they're both at their best, Beneil Dariush would be my pick all day. The problem is, Beneil Dariush was one of those guys who, much like Bilal Muhammad, he had to win and win and win and win to get title consideration. Never got a title shot. Losing, of course, not just his last one, but his last 2. And when you look at that, and the way he lost those fights, absolutely heartbreaking. To get as far as he did, Charles Oliveira blew him away in round number 1. Arman Tsarukyan, same thing, blew him out in just over a minute. There's a reason why Super Bowl losing teams tend to have bad seasons the next year. It's hard to mentally get back there. It's really hard to just mentally reload. Okay, back to training camp. And, dude, I went through this mountain last time and we didn't quite get there. And it's heartbreaking. And Beneil Dariush is one of those guys who've been working and working and working and working. And then he didn't just lose. He got wrecked twice in a row. And the idea that he's able to mentally climb back against a guy in Renato Moicano, who is so tough, so durable. He's well-rounded. He's well-coached. He's on a winning streak right now, so all the momentum is on his side. I think skill-wise, Beneil Dariush is naturally a little bit bigger. I think he naturally hits a little bit harder. He's incredibly well-rounded. I would normally go with Beneil Dariush, but right now, their momentum is just going in different directions. And right now, I would say Beneil Dariush, I don't know if he has what it takes to right the ship and be a contender again at 155 when he's put so much into it. He is not a spring chicken, even in regular years at 35 years old, let alone MMA years, where he's been through so many tough fights, 28-fight career, a lot of that against the elite level. I got to go with Hanan I'm, probably either late stoppage or decision, because Beneil Dariush is still very, very tough. Chin might be starting to go out on him after 2 blowout losses. So I got to go with Hanan I'm. Hanan I'm, a slight favorite, depending on your book, 160-ish, minus 160. So a slight favorite, but still it's worth going with Hanan I'm. Umar Nurmagomedov versus Merab Dvalishvili. This is one of those where a good expression, I work for ProBox TV, guys, in case you don't know what I'm doing these days. I'm a play-by-play guy for ProBox TV, and got to work a lot with Teddy Atlas. And one of the things Teddy says is some guys, being a champion makes you 30% better. Right? You get that belt, it says world champion on it, and it elevates you. Other guys, it kind of rips the heart out of them. You know what I mean? So many get that title and go, well, that's my dream. I got it. And it takes the hunger out of them. They're not the same guy. Others are like, I know what it's like to be number one. I am never, ever losing this feeling ever. It makes them better. It makes them more motivated. I think Merab is in that category of more motivated as champion. It took him a long time to get here, much like, once again, Merab Dvalishvili, much like Beneil Dariush. It's one of those things where he wasn't gifted a title shot. He had to really work hard to get there, and I think it's making him more aggressive, and I like that he's up against a Nurmagomedov, where his first title defense is not somebody he can overlook. It's somebody he really has to stay focused for. And it's someone who's almost a mirror image of him, right? Nurmagomedov is 2 inches taller, but Eastern European, for people who don't know, that's where Georgia is, by the way. Merab, wrestling-centric, Sambo background, very, very tough, endless gas tank, really versatile. Which guy am I talking about? They both have those skills. The one thing is that Merab knows what it's like to climb and climb and climb and finally get there. And when you look at the records, obviously he's taken on better talent, although Nurmagomedov hasn't had an easy road. He dominated Corey Sandhagen, very, very tough fighter. But both of these guys have a similar thing where if they can manhandle you, you're done. If they can put that physical, grinding game on you, right, that Dagestani, Georgian kind of game, you're in trouble. Well, trust me, we'll get to the main event in a minute. Similar kind of thing where you're almost looking at a mirror image of yourself. Who gets those advantages in the physical exchanges? I think it's going to be Merab because of that slight experience edge. He's been in tougher fights against tougher guys. Sure, he's, Nurmagomedov, of course, coached by Khabib. There's that legacy there. They're still individual people with their own styles, their own strengths, their own weaknesses. And Umar Nurmagomedov is an incredible fighter. He's very, very good. I think Merab, though, is right now in his prime. Mentally, I think he believes he's the number 135 pound in the world. He's finally getting a chance to show it. I think it's a little soon for Nurmagomedov, meaning I would have liked to see maybe one more elite level guy. Henry Cejudo, for example, somebody like that where you go, okay, this is what he's like against a really, really tough former champion. Sandhagen was great. Very tough fight. That's a guy you could kind of take off his game, ground him, take him down, and you can beat him. I would like to have seen him take on some tougher wrestlers to get here. I think it's going to be a very tough wrestling match, and I think I think Merab Dvalishvili ends up winning that. So, Jiří Procházka versus Jamal Hill. This is one of those where Jiří Procházka, both former champions, Jiří Procházka, kind of the cardiac kid of this division. What I mean by that is big, strong, technical, good at certain things, but he takes these risks that are unbelievable, where he seems to have it in the bag, and he drops his hands and get an exchange, it gets cracked. And if you look at the Glover-Teixeira fight, it was back and forth the whole time. And Glover made a lot of mistakes that let Jiří Procházka back in it, but Jiří Procházka made a ton of mistakes that gave Glover-Teixeira a good position. So he has all the physical tools should he put them all together at the same time, but he's kind of a wild man. We all know about the staying in a dark room for 3 days. He's an odd dude. He's really weird. But it's this idea to me that if he puts it all together, he can be number one. He rarely puts all of it together in a technical way where it's really, really sound. And the difference in this fight against Jamal Hill is I don't think Jamal Hill is a guy I put a lot of faith in technically. I think when he won the title, remember he was like number 7 in the division, got a shot at Glover Teixeira, and then ended up outboxing him for 5 rounds. He's not going to do that to everybody. I think he took on kind of an old, slow, Glover Teixeira, ended up being Glover Teixeira's last fight. I don't think Jamal Hill beats the guys he would have needed to beat to go from 7-1 had he progressed up, right? The Alexander Rakicits of the world, right? The Eryk Prochazkas of the world. Right? I don't see him being Nurmagomedov. I don't see him beating those guys. He kind of got a leapfrog, got a faded former champion, beat him up, and became champion. But of course, as you all know, he had an Achilles injury, ended up having to give up the title. I'm just not sold on him having the full skill set to be a real champion in 205, which is always a meat grinder of a division. Good boxing, tactically solid, doesn't make huge mistakes. But I don't think he has all the physical tools, meaning the takedown, the ability to get up again cleanly and easily, the submission game. I don't think he has all those things. I think Eryk Prochazka is more skilled. He has trouble putting it together. Jamal Hill doesn't have the widest skill set in the world. He's a really clean boxer who doesn't screw up a whole lot. I don't think that's enough in this fight, necessarily. I think Eryk Prochazka is going to mix it up, do a lot of crazy, wild things, throw some really off-angle kicks and weird stuff. Now, I go with Eryk Prochazka. That's my pick. If you can get odds on Jamal Hill, if you can get big money on Jamal Hill, I would take it. Why? Eryk Prochazka is the kind of guy who, while incredibly skilled, can also do something really stupid and get knocked out because he dropped his hands at the wrong time. So right now what I'm seeing is a pretty coin flip fight. If you can find good odds on Jamal Hill, take it. I don't think you will. I got to go with Eryk Prochazka probably by submission, I would say rounds 4 or 5. There. Moving on to the main event. Arman Tsarukyan versus Islam Makhachev. I think these odds are insane. It's Islam 4-1, right? Minus 400 for Islam. Arman Tsarukyan plus 300, depending on your book. So the odds makers really overlooking Arman Tsarukyan. If you're going to make money, go with Arman Tsarukyan. Period. You're not going to make money on Islam Makhachev. I think Islam is slightly better. Not 4-1 better, but slightly better. And in a 5-round fight, a great expression when it comes to combat sports, when it comes to basically any sport, greatness shows over time. Okay? Any chess players out there, you can look like a world champion in chess if you have your opening memorized. Okay? It's when you keep going and you're in a middle game that gets complicated that a great player just takes it over and you're screwed, right? They're not going to checkmate you in 5 moves, but it's just they're going to slowly destroy you. You can stay with a good team, point for point, shot for shot, for a while. At a certain point, the better team tends to take over. I think that's what we're going to see here. Islam Makhachev, I think this will be close for the first 2 or 3 rounds, and then Islam will slowly, Dustin Poirier had his moments, and then Islam able to kind of take off. Islam, when it's all said and done, might be an all-time great, might be the all-time great on 155 pounds. He's big, he's strong, he's physical, great submission game, excellent striking, great cardio, well coached. I remember Javier Mendez years ago telling me about, like, man, this kid, Islam Makhachev, you wait. He's Khabib 2.0. He's Khabib even better. But he's a human being. And the one thing that gives me a little pause is, obviously, when you look at his performance against Alexander Volkanovski, he's still a human being. I think he overlooked Volk the first time. Second time, didn't overlook anything, blew him completely out of the water. When he's focused and he's on, he's almost impossible to beat. And one of the things about all-time great athletes, period, in MMA, in any sport, they almost like decide to win. If you ever saw a prime Michael Jordan, prime Kobe Bryant, prime Tom Brady, it's almost like, it's a close game. And then they go, you know what? F this. And they take off and they win. I think there's going to be a little bit of that here, where Islam would have to mentally kind of overlook somebody and get caught doing something dumb. I think mentally, if he believes he's in trouble, which he does, I believe he respects Arman, so you can remember this is a rematch, so he knows how tough this guy can be. I think he comes in mentally focused, and I think it's tough, and I think he takes off in rounds 4 and 5, and we get a decision or a late submission or knockout. Anyway, appreciate you. Glad to be back. Give me a comment. Let me know what you think. I'll talk to you again soon.